Back in 2020, Calendly kicked off this flurry. As soon as you saw scheduling tools, you knew this is a thing that I need to be using. But we didn't quite sort out the workflow until later. These days, scheduling tools are a dime a dozen. Everybody's building them into whatever else they do. But today, they're an indispensable part of the accountant's toolkit. They've replaced the whole emailing back and forth to find a time, but we're still sorting out how to best work them into our processes. This is the second video in a series about how to streamline your intake workflows, be it tax, accounting, or otherwise. Last week we talked engagement letters. I know, it wasn't that bad though. And all of this stuff, your entire workflow, it all starts with engagement letters. So if you haven't caught that one yet, check it out in the playlist linked below. But today, we're talking scheduling. Specifically, what are the best ones on the market today? Some do's and don'ts, and a few concrete ways you can build these into your workflows. Up first, let's talk tools. Calendly, they're kind of the ones that kicked this whole thing off. Recently changed their logo to look like a toilet seat, but still a very good tool. Calendly has been around more than most of the scheduling tools we're gonna talk about. And as a result, they've had some time to pile on the features, but I mean that in a good way. A lot of tools over time, they just kind of start collecting things whether you want them or not. Before you know it, you've got feature bloat, and the thing you actually want to do with that tool gets harder and harder. But Calendly's still very good, works great in a team environment as well. Microsoft Bookings. That's right, scheduling baked right into the Microsoft experience you're used to. Today, functionality is pretty basic, but honestly, it's probably good enough. If it has one thing working against it, is it's gonna create your video conferencing link with Microsoft Teams. But hey, if you're on Microsoft, this could be the easiest one for you. Google does it too. Basically, you set up these blocks of time where people can schedule stuff. There's a public link you can send them, and they get a super ugly calendar view with buttons on it. It sucks. It's not very good. Unless you're like super into keeping within the Google ecosystem, probably better off with a third-party tool. Acuity Scheduling. They got acquired by Squarespace. You can decide if that's a good thing or not. But this was created from scratch to do scheduling. And you can tell, there's a little more TLC that goes into this than you get from the Microsoft and the Google products, in my opinion. Acuity is one of the more fully featured options. You can take payments, and it's got great Zapier support as well. If you caught that spicy scheduling video from a couple weeks ago. SavvyCal, a scheduling tool both you and your recipients will love. Finally, this is one of the newer ones. It's interesting, kind of like a beefed up Calendly. So check this out on their homepage. This is a live demo of a scheduling page. And it kind of takes Calendly to the next level, but in a way that isn't overwhelming or clunky. They make it really easy for you to overlay your own calendar on top of it, which, do I want to plug my calendar into a third-party tool just to schedule a meeting? Probably not. It's one of those things where like the network effects of SavvyCal would make this better. If a whole bunch of people use SavvyCal and you only connected it once, then sure, the next time you get in when it shows your calendar, that would be helpful. But they're pushing really hard to make the scheduling process as frictionless as possible. You can indicate preferences in terms of, here's all my availability, but I would prefer to meet in this range. You can pre-fill recipient info and even let the scheduler determine the duration. One more, Chili Pipers. So this one, in addition to being a scheduling tool like Calendly, it's actually kind of designed to be like an inbound lead tool. So for example, you can put this on your website. They can either schedule a call or even hop on a live video conversation like immediately. So if you wanted to park something on your website, this is a really interesting hybrid of traditional scheduling with better, because you can pull a real live human being in. Now, if I can give you one piece of advice when you're picking your scheduling tool, it isn't about the scheduling tool. Most of them are pretty similar now. The Microsoft and Google tools are probably the most limited, but that's changing really fast. What matters more is how you use them. So let's talk through some do's and don'ts. Access. Get that out of your email signature. With great power comes great responsibility. You control who has the ability to put things on your calendar. It's a privilege, not a right. A couple years ago when I first got Calendly, I was so excited. It was so easy to schedule meetings. I found myself taking a lot of meetings I wouldn't otherwise take. Don't be me. Buffer. Build in a buffer. Don't let people back to back that stuff. It is just awful. If you're including that link to a mass email for like tax intake or something like that, that sucker can snowball on you unless you put proper controls in there. I've not used a scheduling tool yet that doesn't let you do that, that doesn't have that built in where you can set a before and after meeting buffer time. Maximum events. In our line of work, you really can't have meetings all day long. If you're like me, you still need about half your day to keep putting the fire out while you're meeting with people at the same time. So I usually cap the number of meetings on my calendar to 3 or 4 in a day, ensures I've got bandwidth to still handle whatever else comes up that day. Lastly, location. If you have any meeting type that isn't on site, at your office, wherever you normally are, be really mindful of where that meeting is. Because if somebody schedules another meeting right after that and it's across town, you don't want to find that out when you're leaving that first meeting. Do's. Context. When you set up meeting types in your scheduling tool, think context. Don't just think 30 minutes, 60 minutes, Zoom, phone. Create meeting types based on their purpose. So tax intake, financial statement delivery, new client discovery. The more contextual those meeting types are, the more you can automate your workflow around that meeting. Team scheduling, get the whole team involved. The only thing worse than scheduling one-to-one meetings, trying to figure out when a whole bunch of people are available. So most tools will allow for collective scheduling, that's scheduling for a time when everybody is available, or round robin scheduling, a time when a single person within a group is available. Lastly, don't stop at scheduling. These tools, as well as the calendars they integrate with, are well supported by integration tools like Zapier. So scheduling is just the beginning. Look for ways to automate what needs to happen before that meeting and after. And that takes us to workflow. Sidebar. When I ask accountants on Twitter, what are the things you're trying to knock out by the end of the year? You know what answer I get probably twice as much as everything else? Workflow. Workflow. What the is workflow? Too generic, my friend. Let's run through 4 very specific workflows where you can lean on a scheduling tool. Future stuff. You know how every tax season your hair's on fire and you chat with a client and you're like, oh yeah, we'll totally post these journal entries in the summer, or circle back and do some better tax planning. And maybe you actually do, but let's be real. You know when you say it, it's probably not gonna happen. Scheduling is great for this. Think about those specific future scenarios. For example, those problem clients that need accounting help, those adjustments are a great teaching moment. So let's carve out the month of like May and focus on accounting support for your tax clients. So you've got an event type that sets up a 60-minute Zoom call, but it can only be scheduled in the month of May. Or you're in tax planning, a link that can only be scheduled in October or November. Gatekeep. Just as important as the meetings you take are the meetings you don't take. Tax season is peak, low effort, new client inquiry season. Dear sir or madam, I'm inquiring as to the costs of your services for tax preparation. I have a mortgage interest statement this year and I am no longer comfortable preparing my own return. I would like to file it next week to lock in my refinance rate. Now, most scheduling tools allow for paid meeting types. Here's what I'd recommend, especially during tax season. Put those new client inquiries behind a paywall. Charge a small fee for these meetings, nothing crazy, and if they become a client, credit that payment to their account, so the meeting was free. It's gonna weed out most of the cheapskates on day one and save some time during busy season. Be asynchronous. What? Scheduling tools pair really well with asynchronous communication. Communication that isn't happening in real time. The less you have to be somewhere at a specific time or talk with someone live, the more flexibility you have to arrange your day in the way that works best for you. So rather than that phone call or a meeting, record a video explainer or send an email, but then give them the option to schedule an appointment. Most meetings don't need to be meetings, but by still extending the calendar invite, you're leaving the door open to a deeper conversation, but only when it's necessary. So, scheduling tools, loads of use cases. But you know, we're still just scratching the surface. API connectors like Zapier let you build entire workflows around your appointments. The more mature tools like Calendly are getting into workflows themselves. That's the long-term development path of these tools. But there's nothing to stop you from building these workflows yourself today. Things like requesting documents from clients for a specific meeting type, creating tasks. Anything that is an extension of that meeting type, you can build around those appointments with a third-party tool like Zapier. I recently unpacked an automation just like this with Adam Markowitz. Check that video out up here. And this is the second in a series of videos about your intake process. Check out the full playlist for more.